Good morning, people, beautiful people. Welcome to my world famous ad hoc ranting program. And today, the subject is witness protection program. So, this branch of ranting today, I'm going to rant about witness protection program. So, we all heard the story of Dugina, Daria Dugina. Daria, the name sounds a little bit Middle Eastern. Nonetheless, that her father was targeted by some kind of attack, and then she was in his place, and then she supposedly got killed by a blast. Or first of all, I can assure you 99%, not 100%, 99% that she's alive and well. Well, I don't know about well, but alive. Wounded, no. And there's a 1% that she really got hit and was murdered. So let's talk about the 99% first. There's something about leadership, and then there's something about the commoners. Especially when leadership is disconnected, when the masses are already in doubts about the leadership and its authenticity and what it is, and the inheritance of communism and right? And then suddenly a war erupts, right? Because this establishment, which is communism in Russia, wants to invade Europe, right? Support from everywhere, the umbrella of Israel, right? But then they encounter a problem, a big one, colossal problem. This problem is unprecedented for them. Well, it's precedented, but it's been too long, right? That Ukrainian people decided to fight. Now, why did the Ukrainian people decide to fight? Because they know what this thing in Moscow is. They know what communism is. They know what this thing is, and they know what's going to happen to their country, and they are apprised to the state subconsciously, unconsciously, and by way of being a neighbor of Russia. They're apprised to the state of the Russians. So they fought back in defense of their country. They were told that they were Nazis, right? Ask any Ukrainian, are you Nazi? They disagree. Leadership is Nazis. Does that matter really? Maybe they are, but does that really matter? If the leadership in Kiev is a Nazi, then the leadership in Moscow is Nazi too. And if the leadership in Moscow is communist, then the leadership in Kiev is communist too. These two leadership are related, but now in Moscow it's like iron fist rule, top down all the way. There's heavy-handed control. In Ukraine, it's different. You know, the leadership is not exactly a dictatorship, not Hitler or his brother Stalin or Lenin or whoever it is. But let's go back to Dugin and Dugina, right? In terms when war goes awry and people start losing loved ones, and economic situation deteriorates, and so on and so forth, they begin to look at the leadership as being the cause of this trouble, as the cause of their plight, as the cause of the, so on and so forth. So now the leadership, they're sly foxes, right? They're wily, right? They don't feel sympathy for the masses who are serving them, who is dying for them, who is fighting and killing for them, who is losing everything for them. They don't feel sympathy for them. So what they do is devise a scheme to show that they also sacrificed their loved ones for Russia too, because they suffered the consequences too. This happened in Syria, like the brother-in-law of Bashar, the donkey, supposedly got killed, he and a few other big officers like the defense minister and so on and so forth, but in fact they did not. And now the masses get confused, because now supposedly this Dugin guy who was driving the war, sitting across from Leslie Stahl, his sister, by the way, in Crete, telling her that Putin is not moving fast enough on Europe, and speaking Eurasia. Do you guys know what Eurasia means? Have you ever read that 1984 thing and the Eurasian armies and so on? Eurasia means Mongol hordes, right? And if you recall correctly, uh, if you recall as I do, and that's a fact, that Lavrov went and visited Mongolia and sat under the statue of Genghis Khan, right? And he spoke about shared heritage, and they're really the same, really, with a new religion or that religion, which is really Israeli, right? So that's what Eurasia is, and that's what Dugin is. That's what Dugina is. That's what a lot of people are. So he was like pushing hard for this war and for a takeover of Europe by Eurasia, his Eurasia, the Israeli-Mongol combination Eurasia. So people now are suffering hell. Thousands upon thousands are getting killed in Ukraine, and they're being treated like crap, like waste. Their families are not compensated. Their families are not even notified, and they're being there's a cover up for what's going on. And when one of them dies, they either put him in somewhere, like shove him down earth somewhere or whatever it is. So there you go, folks. That's the reason of it. But now, when Dugina dies, there's a state funeral. The entire body of the establishment in Moscow gets angry, right? Well, fakely angry. That's what I saw. And they started threatening Ukraine, but why don't they threaten Ukraine and get angry, all the establishment, all the upper echelons of that giant thing? Why don't they get angry? Because a Russian soldier died on the battlefield. When Dugina is not a soldier, not a combatant, not a militia woman, not a conscript, died by, say, some supposedly attack, right? And the whole body of that upper echelon, including the Pope himself, who is a brother of Pustalinin, right? A brother of Netanyahu's, he gets angry, he calls her innocent. How about you, Pope Francis, calling the Russian soldiers innocent and being abused and cannon fodder, or talk on behalf of Ukrainians who are dying because they're defending their country? He chooses to talk about Dugina, not anybody else, really. If you recall, this guy blamed NATO that they caused Russia to attack Ukraine only when he realized that Russia is not going to take over Ukraine. Otherwise, you would be silent and satisfied that the plan, things are going according to plan. So I'm going to ask you this, Russian soldier, Russian citizen, who are you fighting for? What are you fighting for? Why are you dying? Who are you dying for? What are you dying for? Russia? That's not true. Russian establishment send you to Ukraine to kill the people that are like you. They're very much like you. So there's a truth to that Ukrainian people and Russian people are very close in nature and heritage and religion. And so you've come to kill Ukrainian people for what and for whom? Russia? I don't think so. Look at your Russia the way it is now, the way it has been for 100 years after the arrival of that communism, Nazism combination that still thrives, that still exists, that still rules Russia and Germany, and so on and so forth. Have you ever asked yourself that question? Why are you killing? Why are you murdering? Why are you maiming? Why are you destroying Ukrainians and Ukraine? Why are you doing this? For Russia? I assure you, if you ponder without bias for 1 minute to whom you're serving and whom you're dying for and whom you're killing for and what are you doing, you will discover that you're doing this in Ukraine for all the wrong reasons. In fact, if anybody has a problem, it's you Russians. Your country is a pariah now after communism, after Lenin and Stalin. There is not one in the world. I traveled to a lot of places and I researched and I studied. There's not one citizen in the world, whether it's in Africa or in Americas or in Asia or anywhere else, that doesn't look at Russia and associate it with morbid gulag type communism and they're always that subconscious, and you could feel it in the words, and you could feel it in the you could feel it in their words, you can feel it in their uh, everything that they confess and fess and speak of directly or indirectly. They look at your country and it's a pariah, and they're afraid of it, and they're concerned about it, and they know its history has been bloody, and it's bloody, and it will continue to be bloody so long that establishment is in there. Putin is no different by way of intentions and nature and religion and approach and consideration for other humans than Stalin and Lenin and whatever comes in between, right? The crew chief and Gorbachev and whatnot, right? You may say Gorbachev released Europe. Oh, he had no choice, believe me. While he was doing so and so, his tanks were rolling over people in Lithuania, killing people by tank treads. So ask yourself this question, soldier, Russian citizen, what are you doing, for what and for whom? If there's a time for you to sacrifice for your country, it is to rid your country of this cabal that is sitting in Moscow, that is ruling you, that is killing, that is murdering, that is maiming, and that will always use you to do so and so. I heard that no less than 32 million Russians are eager to immigrate to the West. Look at the West. You go to the West for tourism, like many of you are going to Spain and Italy and here and to Germany and Finland. You're going for tourism. Why don't you go to tourism in Russia? Or why don't you go to tourism in Iran or in China? The two brothers of Pustalinin. Russian soldier, I'm going to try to speak to your sentiments, wake up sentiments in you and wake up reality in you. What are you fighting for? What are you dying for? Who you're fighting for? Who are you dying for? And what are you doing in Ukraine? Like gunning, machine gunning, and destroying cities that are historically pretty much similar to you. If there is a time now to fight, it's to fight that cabal in Moscow and liberate your country from it. That lizard eye cabal of Moscow. Have you ever wondered about Putin and his predecessors and how they dealt you Russians? The history of that regime in the last century in Russia is bloody, to say the least, to be conservative, with words and descriptions. The tundra and the ice and the snow of Siberia was painted red by the blood of Russians and non-Russians alike, right? But mainly Russians. That very gulag, that very same regime, that still rules you now. That still rules you now. That very same regime that still rules you now, from the time of the two brothers Stalin and Lenin, still rules you now. And they are the very same people you're dying for, and these are the very same people that send tens of millions of Russians into the gulags and tens of millions of Russians dying in the Western fronts. You may say you are fighting Nazism. Well, here's the fact for you folks. Nazism is a sister of communism, joined at the hip, like two jaws of a vice, operated, funded, and controlled by the same entity, Zion. That's it, folks. Russian soldier, wake up. Look what happened to your soldiers. They're dying in Ukraine, killing their own like similar people of their own type, of their own heritage, of their own religion, right? Of their own history. And they're not even telling your family that you died in there. While Dugina dies, and they give her a state funeral, and now the whole establishment begins to threaten Europe and everybody else because they killed her, and the Pope says she is innocent. But the Pope doesn't say that you, Russian soldier, who's fighting to spread his authority, that of communism and Nazism, over Ukraine and elsewhere, of course, he doesn't say anything about you because he doesn't care. Make that comparison. Make that comparison. Notice, if you say anything now in Russia, you will be picked up and you disappear. If you object to the war, you are picked up and you disappear. Notice how this Putin is killing executives and of companies and so on, and arresting people, and this is what Putin is no different than Stalin and Lenin. He gave you some little bit of freedom because they had no choice, because after the failure of the Soviet Union in Afghanistan, they had to continue, and continuation wasn't going to happen by way of being more morbid. They had to loosen a little bit. But believe me, if this regime, which continues since Lenin, right, has invaded Europe, like Iran is invading the Middle East, right? Oh, that morbid communism will come back, and the blood purges will begin on you Russians, as much as it will be on Germanics and Scandinavians. Yeah, I kid you not. So ask yourself that question. Now, she's alive. I'm going to go back to that witness protection program. And you may say, oh, Osama, what are you talking about? And if you're in the hood, you say what? Or you scratch your head. Where is she going to hide? Somebody is going to snap a photo of her and show that she's alive, right? That's why I called this the witness protection program. Here in America, there was a problem with the mafia, right? If somebody snitched on the mafia, they killed them. And now, like, for example, when Lake Mead in the east in Nevada, I believe, dried up, they're finding barrels with remains in them, like mafia barrels, you know. So the government devised a scheme that if you snitch on the mafia and implicate them in their racketeering and crimes and so on and so forth, they will give you some new identity, take you to a new place, and you will completely disappear from where you are. So the mafia will not find you and take revenge on you, or pay back, or whatever it is, eliminate you for being a snitch. So it is now Dugina and Jeffrey Epstein, and here and there, they take him into a witness protection program. Where is that witness protection program? It's not like that of the United States. It's in few places. I'll name two, precisely name two for you. Two precise ones are either in UAE, Dubai, namely Dubai, where she goes there and she lives the rest of her life. And if she have any children, they will be repatriated with new names and so on. Or Tel Aviv, right? She goes to Tel Aviv, lives there, acquire a new personality and so on. Believe me, it's very easy to hide in this world. If the Mossad or whoever it is behind you and want to hide you, they will hide you. The other places are in South America, Argentina, Chile, and here and there, and in Russia, it's in the Ural Mountain. Remember Stalin going to Siberia, you know, like fishing and so on, and he wears that hat and so on. There are places there too. That towns, those small places that are not even on the map. People like Butina did what she did, and now she goes there, and she lives the rest of her life in there. Money, fashion, you name it. Life of heavens on earth, like they say. And meantime, she's being mourned by the very same establishment that knows she's alive, right? And then started threatening the West. So you see, folks, it's not far-fetched, you know, and I have very credible but not 100% certain reports that she's still alive. Dugin wants Eurasia. Dugin is bloodthirsty creature, weasel. He wants to see blood because, according to him, all those Germanics, whites, whatever it is, you know, like they're pesky on earth. He wants to get rid of them. And whatever is left of them, he wants them to be servant for him or his Eurasians. Am I against Eurasians? No. I myself have some Eurasian thing in me. Meaningly, I got some, like in Syria, we were mix really of Turkic, some probably Mongol, whites and Arabs, right? You know, so I'm kind of your Middle Eastern Eurasian thing, right? But it's the establishment and the rulers and the runners and the those creatures from hell, conjured from hell, that are running the thing, that are the problem, really. And these are the ones driving nations against each other and wars and so on and so forth. So that's the reason I'm saying it's alive, and like she's alive and so on. And it's just to show, to deceive you Russians into thinking that she's alive. But where is she? Bet money maybe she's probably in Dubai or Tel Aviv, or, like I said, one of those places in Siberia, Eastern Siberia, or South America, but she's there somewhere. Let's go to the 1%. The 1% is that she is really dead. But there is a problem with that. Why? Because those who really carried out the operation, and I would, think they're Russians. I doubt they're Ukrainians. I look at Ukrainians and I don't see their hand in this period. Why am I saying this? It's because Russia, or the regime in Russia, has been killing and shelling civilians since for about 6 months now, and before that since 2014. They're not shy about making this very obvious, destroying apartment buildings, razing cities to the ground like Mariupol, and right. Yet Ukraine has to be to return tit for tat even once, even though they have the means to launch attacks against bordering cities and kill civilians in return, in retaliation. But they didn't do that. So if they were able to refrain from doing so, and I see their reasons for doing so, is because they don't want to change this into civilian murdering contest, right? And Putin is waiting for that. In fact, Stalini and his cabal are killing civilians because they want to change this war into a civilian massacre, right? They don't have to have a reason. They did that in Syria. They did that in Chechnya. Not that Syrians or Chechnyans launched attacks against their civilians or anything else. No, I have nothing to do with that. They accused them of being ISIS, that very small ISIS, symbolic ISIS. Believe me, those people who were mass murdered in millions in Syria, they were so against ISIS. Whenever they found them, they came and basically eliminated them completely. And that angered Putin. And then, if you remember, when supposedly the Turkish Air Force shut down that Russian fighter jet, right? And they started accusing each other. Erdogan said that he has information and evidence that Putin is working with ISIS, and Putin made the same statement saying that he has evidence that Erdogan is working with ISIS. And they killed murdered millions in Syria, raise cities to the ground based on some shadowy thing. And they call you Nazis, right? So they don't have to have a reason when there's no Nazism in Ukraine. So Russian people, you're being taken on a ride, and that the results of that ride is not losing some money, or you've been tricked into into a bad hand, like you're playing with your friends, or cheated. Or this is your life and your future, folks, being destroyed for unknowns, for ambiguous. They give you all kind of innuendos, and they give you all kind of speeches and slogans and so on. But if you try to research and dissect what they say and sort it out, it's ambiguous at best. They never give you a precise statement or facts or anything else. No. So Rajan, where are you going with that, man? So suppose she died. Now here's the problem with that. Those who carried out the attack reached as far as to get to the car or whatever it is for that Dugin, only to miss. Just think about it, folks. They go that far, right, to arrive at Dugin's and his car, his SUV or whatever it is, only to miss. Just think about it. It just doesn't happen. It doesn't make sense, folks. Those who have the guts to do so, those who have the ability to do so, those who worked hard to do so, and so on, they're not going to miss, If they wanted to get him, they would have gotten him, right? So I don't believe that. Under normal circumstances, my analysis of it is that it didn't happen. But okay, if it happened. So now the whole entire state of Russia, or Russian Federation, right, starts shaking and shivering and blacking angry statements and so on against the Ukraine, and why don't they do that for each and every soldier, the thousands and thousands of soldiers that are dying every day in Ukraine? The other day, Putin said that he wants to enlist 137,000 more soldiers into the army. Has it ever occurred to you that this is a telltale of how many you lost in Ukraine, whether it's killed, wounded, and or deserters? Russian soldier, a purge is coming. If whether the war, whether Putin loses the war or otherwise, which is not going to happen. The war is lost already. He is going to purge Russia. Its intelligence, its military, its people. He's going to go for a mother of all blood purges. Why? Because he wants to keep that rule of Lenin and Stalin alive, right? Now you may say, "Oh, that's communism," but I said that before, but you probably didn't believe what I'm saying. But if you look again, you will find that he is talking communism. Your tanks are hoisting the communist flags, and then there are those people who really believe in the negative utopia that this life is not good as it is, and they need to fold under this utopia and so on. Oh, you don't know the life you're gonna live under that negative utopia. You will wish you die every day, and some of you may just die. Really, I have seen it when I have seen a fictional work that says this. Like people are put into a cage, right? And they begin to be like part of this utopia, this negative utopia that's void of a belief, that is void of a humanity, that is void of everything. It depends completely on position of materials and pleasure and lust and so on and so forth. And eventually, some of them started like falling from windows and dying, and some of them just going crazy and so on. We don't function this way, folks. We humans don't function this way. And where this regime and its cabal that Zion is driving you is no less than animalism, in which case you humans will not survive. Russian soldiers, I'm going to speak to your mind again. Please take a moment and analyze what you're doing and what's going on. Who are you dying for? What are you dying for? Who are you dying for? What are you dying for? Who are you killing? Who are you murdering? Are these Ukrainians people like you, of heritage, of religion, of neighborly relationship, of history, of everything, of nature? Like I sometimes look at people from Russia and people from Ukraine, and I really see the same people. And they send you to kill them. They tell you they want to fold them into Russia because they're Russians with different accent. That's what Pustalini said. Really? Are you destroying cities like Mariupol because you want to get those Russians back into Russia? Just think about it, folks. I'm going to tell you something else. Do you remember the Minsk agreement when supposedly Russia guaranteed security, Ukraine's security and territorial integrity in exchange for Ukraine giving up their nuclear weapons? And they did. And guess what? That agreement is down the drain, right? But that's not what it is. That entire maneuver to strip Ukraine of its nuclear weapons because they had plans of invading Ukraine and they don't want Ukraine to have nuclear weapons when they're invaded. It doesn't take genius to really realize that's what it is. Have a nice day, my friends. And you Russians, you're not just committing crimes against humanity. You yourself don't know what you're dying for, what you're killing for, what you're murdering for. Your country is a pariah. You're associated, your image in the mind of other people, other nations, other races, and so on, is communism, that is gulags, that is bloodthirsty suckers, weasels, and. If there's time for you now, if you're in Ukraine, surrender, man. Just give up. Don't worry about what's going to happen. 2, go back to Russia and fight against that establishment that is destroying your country and made your country what it is. 32 million people, I read the report, are trying to immigrate to the West. Why would they want to do that if their country is great and good, right? Have a nice day, my friends. And good Friday.